Alright, this video we're going to go over special triangles and trig. Alright, so special triangles and trig. Alright, now when you're dealing with special triangles, more importantly, right special triangles, because that's the only special triangles there are right triangles, you have to remember the Pythagorean theorem, which is a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Alright, Pythagorean theorem. That still works out for these special triangles, but you don't really need to use it for the special triangles because the special triangles hold a certain ratio. So as long as you know one of the sides, you can find the other three just by knowing its place in the ratio. Alright, so let's look at this. So your first special triangle is what's called a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Okay, this is a 45, 45, 90 triangle. Alright, so in a 45, 45, 90 triangle, both legs of the triangle are congruent, and these are both S in the ratio. Okay, some people call it 1, you can call it 1 or you can call it S. And then the hypotenuse of your triangle is S times the square root of 2. So if you have a side length, all you have to do is take that side length and multiply it by the square root of 2, and you have your hypotenuse. And if you have one side length, you have both of these leg lengths here. So as long as you have the length of a leg, okay, or one of these sides here, take that side, multiply by the square root of 2, you have the hypotenuse. Okay? To go the other way, you're going to want to take this and divide it by the square root of 2. Let's look at an example. Okay, here we have a 45, 45, 90 triangle. You're just going to have to take my word for it. Alright, 45. Now, I don't have to label the other one. I'm just going to label that one because you know it's automatically 45, because since that's 90 and that's 45, the only thing left for that one is 45. Say the hypotenuse here is 3 square root of 2. What is a side length? I want to find x. Alright, well, I know that this is S, S, and S times the square root of 2 in the ratio. Alright, so since this is 3 times the square root of 2, alright, all I have to do is take this and divide it by the square root of 2 to get my S. Well, 3 times the square root of 2 divided by the square root of 2 is 3. Okay, so x is 3. Now, you notice all I did was drop off the square root of 2. If your hypotenuse has the square root of 2 in its length, just take off that square root of 2, and that's the length of your side. Alright? If you have a whole number, or even a decimal for that matter, you know, like 3.1 for one of the leg lengths, just throw the square root of 2 on the end of it, and that is the length of your hypotenuse. The only time it gets semi-complicated, whoops, that's terrible, right triangle. Let me try that again. And by trying that again, I mean I'm going to cheat and copy this over. Alright, the only time this gets semi-complicated is when you don't have the square root of 2 in the hypotenuse. So now here we have our 45, 45, 90 triangle. Alright, and our hypotenuse is 8. Now what do we do? Well, we know that this 8 equals S times the square root of 2, and we know that our ratio says this is S, S, and S to the square root of 2. So all we have to do is solve for S. Well, what do we got to do to solve for S? Well, we need S by itself. So divide by the square root of 2, divide by the square root of 2. So S equals 8 over the square root of 2. And don't forget, you do need to rationalize your denominator. So multiply the top and bottom by the square root in the denominator. You get 8 square root of 2 over 2. The 2 will cancel with the 8, making it a 4 and a 1. So s is 4 times the square root of 2. All right, so our side length here is 4 square root of 2. And the same goes to the other, and the same goes the other way. If we knew this was 4 square root of 2 and we wanted our hypotenuse, we would take 4 square root of 2, we would take that and multiply it by the square root of 2. Of course, the only thing you'd multiply are the square roots. So square root of 2 times the square root of 2 is 2, so 4 times 2, which is 8. So you can work the formula either way. So if you have a whole number for your hypotenuse, divide it by the square root of 2, rationalize your denominator, and get your answer. Or you just take your side length, multiply it by the square root of 2, and get your hypotenuse. Now let's look at the 30, 60, 90 triangle. Now across from the 30 is going to be your shortest side, because if you remember from geometry, your shortest side is opposite your shortest angle. So this is going to be S. All right. Opposite your longest side is your opposite your biggest angle is your longest side. So this one is 2S. Opposite your 60 is your medium side, so this is S times the square root of 3. Okay, so S the square root of 3, 2S. Don't confuse S the square root of 3 with being larger than 2S, because it is not. The square root of 3 is somewhere around, I think it's 1.7. Okay, whereas 2 is obviously larger than 1 point anything. All right, so S the square root of 3, and 2S. All right, now let's work a couple problems with this. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Cut. Let's go to a new page. Oh, look, they're already here. Forgot I did that. All right, so here's our triangle, our 30, 60, 90 triangle. All right, so we have S times the square root of 3, and 2S. All right, now say I told you this was 16, and I want you to find S and S square root of 3. So I want you to find the other two side lengths. So what are we going to do? Well, we know 16 equals 2S. So the first thing we're going to want to do is find out what S is, because basically the whole triangle is in terms of S. So regardless of what kind of triangle you have, you want to solve it for S. Okay? Solve for S. If you're given S, you don't have to solve for it. You've already got it. But if you're not given S, solve for S. So 16 equals 2S. Divide by 2. Divide by 2. So S equals 8. So that means this side is 8. This side is 8 times the square root of 3, because all you do is tack on the square root of 3. And no, I do not want you to multiply that through. I want you to leave it as 8 times the square root of 3. That's what I want you to leave it as. All right, do not multiply it through. All right, I think I've talked enough here. Here is a U-tri. We have a 30, 60, 90 triangle. All right, I'm not going to write this. I'm not going to write the trick in. Hopefully you have it written down. You can always back up the video. All right, but this side of the triangle is 7. I want you to find X and Y. So find the other two sides of the triangle. So pause the video and solve it. All right, so first thing I would always recommend is write in the ratio inside your triangle. S times the square root of 3, 2S. All right, so now let's solve for S. Well, we know 7 equals, S times the square root of 3. Divide by the square root of 3. Divide by the square root of 3. So S equals 7 square root of 3. Rationalize your denominator. So 7 square root of 3 over 3. So that is your S value. Now, since x equals s, that is also your x value. 7 square root of 3 over 3. Okay? That is your s value. Now, to find y, all we have to do, y equals 2s. So y equals 2 times 7 square root of 3 over 3. Well, when you multiply a whole number by a fraction, you just simply multiply it. You just multiply the whole number by the numerator. So 14 square root of 3 over 3 is y. All right, that was a little tougher of a problem, but it worked the same way. Hopefully you got those answers. If you didn't, hopefully you realize now how I got those answers, and you can go back and find your mistake. All right. All right. Last thing I want to cover is Sohcahtoa. All right, Sohcahtoa. All right. What this means is you have sine, you have cosine, and you have tangent. Okay. Your sine is the first three letters of the word Sohcahtoa, S-O-H. Your cosine is the middle three letters, C-A-H. And your tangent is the last three letters, T-O-A. Now, you might ask yourself, what does that mean? All right. It simply means that the sine of your angle, I'm going to say alpha, equals O over H. O stands for opposite over H stands for hypotenuse. All right. The cosine of your angle equals the A stands for adjacent, which means the side physically next to your angle over hypotenuse. And tangent of your angle equals opposite over adjacent. Hopefully you remember this from geometry. Now, opposite and adjacent are all based on your angle that you are using to solve your problem. The hypotenuse will always, always, always be the side opposite the 90-degree angle. So this is always going to be your hypotenuse. All right, that is always going to be your hypotenuse. Now, you see how side B here is physically touching the vertex of A? Since it is physically touching the vertex of A, this is your adjacent side. And see how side A here is physically on the opposite side of the triangle from our angle A? That means this is the opposite side. All right, that means that is the opposite side. All right. So you can now find side links with opposite and adjacent. Okay, you can find side links with opposite, adjacent, and hypotenuse. Now, something else special about tangent here. All right, tangent, if you remember, equals sine over cosine. So the tangent of your angle also equals the sine of alpha divided by the cosine of alpha. All right. So, little example. The sine of A would equal opposite, which is A, over hypotenuse, which is C. All right. The cosine of angle A would equal the adjacent side over the hypotenuse. Oops, that's supposed to be a C. I'm going to have to erase the whole thing because my eraser is too big. So the cosine of A equals B over C. And then the tangent of A equals opposite, which is A, over adjacent, which is B. So there's some examples for you. If these had been numbers, we would actually have numbers there. All right. So, Sohcahtoa, your special triangles. That's pretty much all I'm going to go over in this video. Now, the important thing to remember with your special triangles, again, is to remember that ratio. Remember that ratio. Okay? For your 45, 45, 90 triangle, remember it's S, S, and your hypotenuse is S times the square root of 2. For your 30, 60, 90, the short side is S, the medium side is S times the square root of 3, and the hypotenuse is always going to be 2 times S. All right? And then with Sohcahtoa, the next video I'm going to dive a little deeper into Sohcahtoa, show you a little bit more of how to use it. All right, I didn't want to make the second video so long, so that's why I added it onto here, because the next video may be just a tad long if I hadn't included this with it. All right, so just giving you an introduction, more of a refresher of Sohcahtoa, because you should remember this from geometry. I don't know if it's used in algebra 2. So remember the special triangles, remember the ratios of the sides, and hopefully this Sohcahtoa jogged your memory the for that. All right. So tomorrow I'll be ready to tackle some problems on this in class. See you tomorrow.